have always lived here since the beginning of time. We are the Musqueam, people of the rivergrass, and we've been here on the Fraser River and throughout Vancouver's inlets for thousands of years.
History has described that every nation of the world, that those who were the richest lived at the river deltas, the Roman Empire, likewise with us here in Musqueam.
As long as we can remember, there was a rich food supply here at the Fraser's mouth, and we hunted, trapped, and fished the rivers and oceans, harvesting salmon. We are traditional Hunt-Caminum-speaking people and are descended from the cultural group known as the Coast Salish, here in the Pacific Northwest. While we welcomed peaceful guests to our territory, we also kept a lookout for invaders, northern tribes, looking for slaves or resources.
When they'd come down, they always used to say, you gotta stay away, stay right of the gray wall. That's what they call Point Grey down there, the big gray wall. You have to go around it. If you go up that river, unless you're coming in peace and bearing gifts, you're in for a battle. Because their battlegrounds just down by the Molly, one of our old villages there, they found skulls and arrowheads and all artifacts of the battles that went on there.
We had our various warriors and lookouts, and these individuals would run to the various village sites to inform those heads of families that we had guests coming, and they would inform them whether or not those guests were indeed friend or foe. We were always prepared that they were the enemy approaching. These runners were our warriors. They were individuals who had to be physically fit because our lives depended upon it.
But in 1808, a new kind of visitor arrived. Fur trader Simon Fraser was the first to come overland and down our river. Previous experiences with European explorers, Captain Vancouver and Galliano, had taught us to be wary of these strangers. So when Fraser arrived, we attacked. In those days, the Musqueam had some 40 village sites spread out across miles of present-day Greater Vancouver. This allowed us to access the resources and protect our territory.
And the warriors there from each village site would amass in strategic locations ready to do battle, and our government structure depended upon it, because we could not lose our young and we could not lose our women, who were basically the true historians of our community. They were the ones who were educating our children.
The power of our leadership was represented in these mountain goat wool blankets and robes, unique to the Coast Salish people, and the Musqueam have always had their own distinct designs for these spiritual articles of clothing.
The blanket that the individual would wear would be identifiable to his place in his home, his family, his community. These more complex blankets, the ones that they wore when they traveled and went to meet King George in England, would be the best dressed. That's what they're wearing them for. It's when we get ready to go somewhere, we wear our suits and our best clothes, and that's what they did.
Once a forgotten art, weaving was brought back to life by Musqueam women in the early 1980s.
My grandfather one day said to me, "You want to see some really nice stuff?" And I said, "Sure." I must have been maybe 10 or 11. He went upstairs and he came down with a bag, and in the bag he had an old, what they call swilquat blanket, and it was made from goat hair and dog hair, and it was a weaving like I had never seen before. And that's really where the whole idea of Salish weaving for me came around. The story of who we are is woven into the blankets.
Today we use sheep wool. However, of course, what they were using were mountain goat, but it was also mixed with a dog hair, different steganettal material, cedar, beaten very finely, and it might be the core of what the hair of the mountain goat would wrap around.
Cedar bark weaving has also been making a comeback, and today, Musqueam people are revisiting the traditional ways of harvesting cedar, including the blessing of the site. Due to the scarcity of cedar in our now urban territory, today we need to travel at least an hour away to find the bark we need. Here, our people strip the bark in the traditional way, a technique that can be hard to master, but ultimately leaves the trees standing.
Good one.
Once gathered and dried, these cedar strips will be used to make a variety of traditional objects, like baskets, balers, and mats.
Traditions like weaving continued for many years after contact as we continued to trade with the newcomers. But all of that changed with the coming of disease in the mid-1800s, which took an enormous toll on all First Nations. Then missionaries and the gold rush followed. As resources were extracted all around us, Musqueam people learned to adapt, working as farmers and fishermen while retaining our cultural ways and spiritual teachings.
We were fortunate. We didn't have a priest residing in our community because the priest would only come in the summertime. So when they banned the potlatch and outlawed it, our people of the past were quite smart. They moved their summer ceremony and merged it along with our winter ceremony so that they could continue to practice non-stop what they had been practicing for thousands and thousands of years.
Beyond our longhouse ceremonies, we had a spiritual connection to the land and water around us. The ocean, rivers, and creeks fed us both physically and spiritually. These bathing rituals are important to Musqueam people even today. Combined with sacred dance, song, and ritual in our longhouses, we have always found a balance of mind, body, and spirit.
We had two kinds of ceremonies. One, the winter ceremony with the longhouse. It was somewhat of a secret society, which only those people who were initiated into it participated and attended. But also as well, they had potlatches in the summertime, whereby another ceremony where our masks were used in the outdoor ceremony to mark the occasion of marriages, namings, memorials, coming of age, within that spiritual rites of passage that allows you to indeed reach to the other senses that the Creator provided to you, that you no longer use. You almost start to see with your ears and hear with your eyes. That's the only way I can sort of describe it.
Stretching some 1,400 kilometers from its source in northern BC, the Fraser is one of Canada's longest rivers and is the heart and soul of the Musqueam people. While technology has brought a lot of change to our people, we're still tied to this river that has nourished us for centuries. Today, like everywhere in the world, fish stocks are threatened. And so these fisheries officers from Musqueam and Tsawwassen First Nations patrol the Fraser's waters to ensure that the right salmon stocks are being fished.
I know.
This year, there's been a huge drop in the number of sockeye on the river. And so far, only a brief spring salmon run has been open to fishing. These Musqueam people are continuing a fishing tradition which has run in their families for centuries.
Barbecue time. Been fishing this spot for 22 years. Before that was my grandfather. Before that was his father. It's done our family well over the, many generations since we've been here. And hope to have it for another 100 years to come for my children and my children's children.
Musqueam has long been on the front lines in getting Aboriginal, ancestral, and treaty fishing rights acknowledged. Thanks to the 1990 Sparrow decision, it is now a part of the Canadian Constitution.
When we went to court, we said very strongly that our Aboriginal right to fish is something that's been here from time immemorial, and we went through all of the arguments, and the Supreme Court of Canada came down on our side of this. The Sparrow Case set the groundwork for Aboriginal rights across the country, and I think throughout the world, because there's been people from throughout the world, Indigenous people, coming and asking how they could come to the same place in their communities.
I have now been fishing on the river here and on the coast of BC for 47 years now. I started with my dad at 8 years of age, and every year since. It's not just salmon. We're somewhat in a decline in other stocks here. Sturgeon, hooligans, they were a big part of our diet throughout the year, and that's now no more. With any ethnic group in the world, that when you have a lifelong and generational connection, it becomes a part of you, and this river certainly is a part of us, and it always will be.